Welcome to the podcast, Bijou.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I am really excited for this conversation. But first, I want to start with something that's never been done on this podcast before, which is your disclaimer.
Yeah. Well, just to make sure that people know we are not medical professionals. I am not a medical professional, so this is not medical advice, and that we are not condoning the sale or the purchase of illegal drugs. We're just talking about a medicine that we hope will be legalized across the nation soon. So, yeah, that's a great way to get off on the right foot.
Right. I am so excited. So you are the Mushroom Mamacita and all things mushrooms. But I know that your story didn't start in this place of healing, because although we're talking about mushrooms, this is really about self-love. This is about healing. This is about your journey. Can you tell us a little bit about your life back in Austin?
Yeah. It's actually one of my favorite things to think about now. Before, it used to almost make me cringe a little bit, but now I have a lot of love for where I've been and who I used to be. If I look back, I was definitely very focused on money, very focused on my drive to succeed in what I thought success was, that was mirrored from other places in my life. And they really weren't aligned with my soul. And I think that's why I was kind of unhappy and running away from a lot, keeping myself very busy, working very long hours. I don't think I would consider myself a good boss at that point. Or a good person, a good human. I mean, I definitely was sweet and loved people, but I didn't explore the depths of my love for myself or for my community or for the planet at that point. So I was very surface level. And I believe that actually looking into your shadow or your icky places that you don't really like paying attention to is where you can find a lot of love eventually. So yeah, I was running myself a little ragged back then, and I kind of just hit a wall, and I was really trying to find answers in the biohacking world, like what supplements can I take, what wearable tech can I do, what breathing exercises do I need to do. And it was very focused on results. And I accidentally kind of stumbled upon mushrooms or psilocybin. And I was originally utilizing it for what they were touting it to be, which was focus and clarity and mood and everything that an entrepreneur might want. But then it got way deeper than that. I developed a much deeper relationship with them, and I found profound healing. And that's when I realized that my business and myself would never be the same after the type of healing that I did, because everything changed after that. I was actually able to show up for my business, like my face and my soul and my values. And I was feeling really good about the work that I was doing because it really aligned with what I wanted to do in the world. And yeah, it was just like my intimacy blocks were removed and are still being removed. And that allowed me to have better connections to my clients. And I was just like, wow, this is like what entrepreneurs need. And so that's what I've been doing, is just really trying to destigmatize them and get entrepreneurs comfortable with the idea of utilizing them as a tool. And I just try to hold their hand, since it is a little bit scary, to develop the right regimen and dose and protocol for them. And that way they can utilize it and still be moms and still be business owners and still be wonderful members of their communities.
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely not talking about the trips that you went on back in the day, or most people went on. I was normally the designated safety zone. I was always the safety net for everyone.
Nice.
And we're not talking about that here. So the power of mushrooms and the connection that we have to mushrooms is, it goes beyond just what we hear, the stigma, or if you are into holistic healing, maybe you've taken some of the more holistic route. I know that I take lion's mane as one of my favorite, especially this time of the any time of the year. Let's be real, I take them all the time. But there is these magical properties to mushrooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if anyone has, hopefully you've watched it, but if not, the Fantastic Fungi on Netflix does a superb job of explaining how powerful, how intelligent, and how much we really depend on mushrooms without even knowing it. There's so many amazing medicinal mushrooms out there that are helping with the way that we age, the way that our brains work, our cardiovascular systems. I mean, you can really find a medicinal mushroom for almost every one of your ailments. And so that's where I really got even deeper into a relationship with mushrooms, just because I was amazed at how much you could do with them. I mean, heck, you can even create vegan leather out of them now. I mean, they're really just anything that you need to do with mushrooms is almost possible at this point. So yeah, I mean, I think more and more people are getting comfortable with the idea of the medicinal route. And I hope that eventually the psilocybin is just lumped in with them, just because they are so incredibly safe. They're not addictive. And I mean, they're orders of magnitude safer than most things that people take on a daily basis. And so, especially at the right dose, a very small dose allows you to go about your day like it was a cup of coffee or a glass of wine. So I would say, yeah, they're all just medicinal to me at this point.
Yeah. That documentary, if you haven't watched it, I recommend it. It was so eye-opening to hear what would happen if mushrooms ceased to exist. I was like, planet ender.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how is something so small that we just take for granted? Granted, I love them in all forms, but we take them for granted or as a nuisance, or my husband calls them poop flowers. I'm just like, well, I will
like it.
gladly take my poop flowers any day of the week over whatever else it is that you're popping in your pill bottle.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they did such a fantastic job, and I really love telling, especially my new clients that are any type of apprehensive, to watch that documentary, just because it really shows how safe they are, and how they can benefit your life, and the fact that they were lumped in with some of the other really dangerous drugs that they couldn't understand, and they just assumed were bad. And I can understand that scientists back in the 50s might have watched someone on a mushroom trip and go, oh my gosh, they just went crazy, that's a horrible thing. But honestly, it's how we somatically move a lot of trauma out of our bodies. And it might look a little bit weird for a minute, but it's what we really need. I believe that that's why talk therapy sometimes isn't enough. You need talk therapy for integration, but you really need to move energy out of your body that's locked up, and doing it with purging energy by either shaking or crying, or just being in fetal position. Some of the things that happen on a really big trip really help you feel so much better after the fact. So yeah, I can understand why they were kind of lumped in with those scary drugs, but they are absolutely, they have no correlation to any of the drugs that in my opinion should be on those lists, like heroin and cocaine and all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that soon, especially with all the research going on with mushrooms, that eventually they will be taken off of that bad list and put on the nice list, because they are so nice.
Let's cross our fingers. Let's do, all collectively just be put our power into the power of a mushroom. I think that
Mhm.
that's so amazing. So you've talked about two different things that I've picked up, which is one is this micro dosing, and one is the bigger, profound, we're going on a journey. Can you explain a little bit of, I don't know, which one to start with, or how that affects us in our business and our life? I have all the questions.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I really came out talking about microdosing, just because I believe that almost anyone can microdose and see some real benefit out of it. Like people that are older, like 80 even, they can see a really help with neuroplasticity that is caused by psilocybin. And then entrepreneurs, like the stress management associated with it. And what I like about microdosing is that it gets you comfortable and in a relationship with mushrooms, and you begin to trust them, and you get to see the great impact that they're having on your life. And that typically leads people to loving them so much and wanting more results, that they might do a really simple, like what I like to call a meet the mushroom tea, where it might be anywhere from 1 gram to 1.5 grams. And it helps you maybe like move some frustration that you have in a while. So it might just be a really nice cry, or it might be a really big laugh, or it might just be a really cozy moment. And you could even do it with your partner. And then typically, especially if you have support and you're helping a therapist, like get some of these deep-seated psyche blocks up to the surface, then you realize, oh, that's a big one that I don't know if I can move with just practices. I might need a deeply profound trip. And in that case, you would want a facilitator. My humble opinion is that it's really nice to do in a ceremonial setting. I know that there are people and facilitators out there that might do it in a more clinical type setting, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's definitely a safe way to go. But I do love the layers that a ceremony offers, like the smells of the incense and the container that's being made for you, and the coziness and the music and everything just really add to you surrendering and letting go, and really getting some of your blocks up and out of your system. So yeah, it's a journey. And I believe that doing microdosing for a while and then doing a couple of teas really gets you prepared for the type of surrender that you're going to need to be able to do it in a bigger trip situation. And then eventually your brain just gets so used to this, and it's not going to freak out as much, that it becomes easier for you to actually go in there with an intention to do some work, rather than just acclimating your body to what exactly is happening to you. And so in my opinion, I see it as this nice journey, and I don't use them all the time. I do containers of microdosing based on what I have going on in my life as like a maintenance. And then typically like once a year, I might do a big trip, and that might be to cancel clear some really big stressful moments that I had, or it could be clarity on my business. And then definitely my partner and I, we do a really nice trip on our anniversary typically, just because it helps us rebond and kind of heal all the 1,000 little cuts that happen throughout the year because of stress. And honestly, my microdosing now after 5 years is really just a way for me to connect with my body. I've really cleared so much stress and trauma, and especially with other practices like breath work and moving my body and talk therapy, that it's just a really amazing meditation now. And it happens really quickly. It's over in like 30 minutes and I go about my day. So I honestly believe eventually it's going to be like someone else said to me the other day, that they're just going to be, it's an additive that you put in your smoothies, and then you're just like, it's so normalized. I really believe that we will get there eventually.
Oh, I hope so. Because that, I mean, from what you're describing, that sounds like the best way to approach life, to be able to just be present in that moment, go in. One of the words you said that like really sticks out is go in with intention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's one of the things that has put the stigma on there, is that a lot of people weren't going in with the intention of healing. That was not the intention.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And I love that this is what you are bringing to the world, because the things that you just said that you're able to do and work through, like you said, 30 minutes. Wow. To be able to work through that, where you might be in talk therapy for years, to bring connection to your partner, to your body, to your business. That is just, okay, mushrooms are getting more and more magical to me every moment.
Yeah.
Every moment.
Yeah, it is. I believe before I was intentional, I was really blocked. I was not connected to my body. I was not connected to even my purpose in life. Everything was very unclear to me. And that's the thing that I've gotten the most out of is clarity and empowerment to do what I actually want to do. And so, yeah, it's a really interesting thing that I know a lot of people feel like it sounds too good to be true, but I mean, it's helping people with addictions. It's helping people with brain issues. It's helping people with like sleep and depression and anxiety. And I know the list is so long that they're like, how can one thing help that? But honestly, why it can help all that is because it goes to the root of the problem, especially if you have a facilitator or someone that can ask you some questions, because we have done such a good job of burying our issues since we don't have the time and energy to deal with them. And we're going about our days that it can be really hard to find the root. I mean, typically when I work with someone, they are aware of this as the problem. And then eventually we find out that actually it was this thing and it's the problem that caused all these problems. And so when you really target that one and that's your intention, wow, can a lot change with just like one solution. And to your point, a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, this one time in college, I took way too many when I was drunk at a concert and it traumatized me and I don't think I could do this. And I'm like, yeah, yes. Yeah, that would really traumatize anyone. And that, in my opinion, is not the way we should utilize them. Definitely, there is a recreational aspect to them, like camping with your friends or taking a very small amount once you're comfortable with them to really feel the music if you're going to a concert, or I don't know, just like a couple different varieties of experiences that this might help enhance it. But knowing your dose really well and knowing that it's going to make you much more sensitive to the stimuli around you and really leaning into that rather than being like freaked out by it. So it does take a minute to tweak and to refine and to dial in your perfect dose for your physiology and what you're trying to accomplish with it. But once you do, you can utilize it across your life. And it's really interesting.
So when you say like the perfect dose, is that just finding that level of you're able to get the connection to self and still, I don't want to say function because then it sounds like a bad, like, I feel like it's, drop on the floor drunk, but like, and still have that ability to live your everyday life. That's a better word for it. Live your everyday life.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, so let's talk about alcohol, right? If you were to have one glass of wine, you would be fine. You could function, you could talk to anyone, you could potentially, like, you're not supposed to, but you could drive. It's not a big deal. If you were to have 4 bottles of wine, that would be a different story, right? That's the same with mushrooms. So you need to find your right dose, and your right dose differs for different people. So for instance, some people's metabolisms are different. Some people have trauma that they need to pass before they start seeing some of the really amazing aspects that a microdose can offer. Or some people are on SSRIs, so they have to take a little bit of a higher dose, which is another thing that I love, helping people get off of SSRIs with mushrooms. But yeah, so you have to take everything into account, like how sensitive are you, how much do you weigh, how tall are you, what are your goals associated with it, do you want to take a higher dose before bed and pass some of your stuff at night, or do you want to utilize it in the morning for focus and clarity and mood? So really having someone hold your hand and figuring out the right dose for you, really, like, it really gives you an empowerment. So they can take their perfect little dose in the morning and have a really wonderful meditation or a stretch or an alone time for 30 minutes, and then go about their day. And it's just barely in the background. And they have a great resource for dealing with their stress or focusing on their calls, and their word recall is better and their mood is better and they can sleep better. Whereas some people are like, yeah, I have my 3 times a day, 3 times a week microdose, but then on the weekends when I want to do something creative at home, I might take 2 of them. So it really just like allows you to kind of stack depending on what you have going on, and exploring the benefits of the different doses and what the different doses offer to your life.
Ooh. I'm like, okay, where do I sign up?
Yeah, I know it's pretty incredible. And I don't know, honestly, what's going to happen in the future. Since it is very inexpensive to grow your own in your own closet and be empowered enough to help yourself. That really does take a lot of money out of the pharmaceuticals hands. So they might be trying to synthesize it right now and put it in a form that makes people feel safer to take it, but inherently takes the intelligence or the natural side out of the medicine, which I am worried about. And if they were to put a big lockdown on that, where you had to have a prescription and it was super expensive and you had to go into a clinical setting and someone's just going to put a blindfold on you and take notes instead of like being there for you, that's kind of like a nightmare that I hope doesn't happen. But to be honest with you, if that is the worst that happens, it's still mushrooms getting out into the world, which is my biggest dream, just because the biggest problems that I see in our society is we're not connected to ourselves. We're not connected to the environment. We're not connected to our communities. And definitely what I've seen across the board is not only in my own life, but in my clients' lives is connection. It's a reconnection, but in a really beautiful, profound way that makes you do a lot for yourself and your community and the planet. So whatever it takes for us to make these big changes, I just hope that it's in the way that empowers people and it still allows it to be very inexpensive. But knowing our society, I doubt that that's going to be the path that we go down.
Who knows with everything that's going on and the structures that are getting broken down. Hopefully it doesn't, and hopefully it never goes synthetic, because the synthetic is never going to, work with our bodies the same way. It's just like you were talking about the SSRIs. If you can do the same thing with a plant, that is magic. I mean, nature can provide us with everything we need. I'm an anti-big pharma kind of girl, and I mean, there's their time and place, whatever, but I believe that nature can provide healing to almost everything in this world.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm really passionate about getting people off of SSRIs because the side effects that some of these people are experiencing are horrendous. And also, it's extremely expensive. And honestly, a lot of times you have to keep switching because they stop working for you. And a lot of people feel like they're not able to feel the depths of their emotion on them, which is it makes me really sad because that's what life is all about. And I feel like it's more of a band-aid than a solution. And if you heal the things that are making you sad and anxious, that's way more than just taking something that makes you forget about it. In my humble opinion, like, who am I to say? I'm sure that there are some people that really, really need SSRIs, but I would say from my experience, the majority of people would be just fine without them and utilizing therapy and small amounts of mushrooms to really help their mood and their anxiety.
Yes. I'm like, okay, you've sold me. I will be in your inbox. I am all in. Being somebody who had to come off of the SSRIs, that shell that it made me, that's how I felt like I walked around this planet. It was like, I am a shell. I am in this meat suit. I am making the motions. There wasn't happy. There wasn't sad. It was just this being that wasn't really being. It was just taking up space, and not in a good way. So I love that this is what you are bringing, and you are helping clients through this too, correct?
Yeah. So what I've realized is, we're all extremely different and we all have these, an extreme amount of nuance to us. And that's why it should be a very customized approach. But once you take the time to figure out someone's past traumas and where they're trying to go, what their goals are or what their desires are, then we really are semi-identical in the way that we have certain layers to us, like our inner child to work on, the programming that we might have gotten from our parents and our society. I like to call it, and what my training was calling it, is the ecology to thrive. So a lot of times we knew what to say to get what we semi wanted out of our environments growing up, and we kind of keep utilizing those methods to get what we want, but we were never really taught to say what we want, find out what we want, support people in giving us what we want. And so really like putting it all out on the table to figure that out, and doing it even on a microdose. So a lot of times my clients will take one and then we get on a Zoom together and I ask them leading questions that when you're on your microdose, you're much more open, and you're much it's easier for you to process emotion and easier to answer questions out of your body or out of the back of your brain, rather than the front one that's like, what do I have to say to my therapist to not sound crazy? Or is she going to judge me? Or, you know what I mean? So it allows you to kind of just be you and to be honest about what's going on, so you can actually get deeper help. And then you can find either the little ones that need to be moved, like the little blocks that could be moved with reparenting your inner child, or with reconnecting to your body, or figuring out what your goals are and going on a different path, or your values. Or maybe it's a huge block, in which case after a couple of calls we realize this seems like it's rooted, it's in there, and we need to do potentially a big trip, and in which case we would go somewhere where it's legal, and I would facilitate in person a pretty big trip. But having that real intention, having the idea of what really needs to be changed in your mind, and makes all the difference. And that I feel like is almost like a surgical approach to getting results rather quickly. So in just a year or 2 years, you can be on a completely different trajectory of your life, rather than 15 years of talk therapy, where you're kind of just parroting through some of your problems to feel like, yes, it feels good to say them out loud, and maybe you do get a lot of clarity onto what's been bothering you, but then you're left with this information and you don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. I've had a lot of talk therapy, and that's been one of the things that I was like, oh, this is interesting. Now what do I do with this? Now it's at the surface. My hour is up. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
I didn't figure out what to do next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we're all having the same experience. Yeah.
So where can people find you?
So I'm super active on Instagram. I love Instagram, even though I know a lot of people believe it as social media is evil, but I do love the connections that I make on Instagram. I do love when people message me with questions. I typically get a lot of people booking discovery consultations with me through my link in my bio, just to understand and ask me questions like, is this right for you? We go through like what medications you're on, what your goals are like, what your family life is like, what your business is like, to understand what the right approach should be for you. So not a lot has to change. That is with like completely unravel what you have going on. But yeah, it's I also have a website that people can find me on and ask me more questions. But please, I know it's scary, and I know that it might feel like insurmountable to try something like this in your life right now, but there's been some pretty brave folks that have reached out to me, and they're very glad that they have. So yeah, I'm here for people if they're interested.
And what is your handle on Instagram, and what's your website?
It's Mushroom Mamacita on Instagram, and it's storyxstyle.com on my website.
That's amazing. And I know just from going on your website, you have a lot of there. I think there was a beginner's guide or something along that lines of microdosing that I'm like, okay, I have to get this, because this is something that I need. So I do have a follow-up question to what you offer, since you're doing this on Zoom,
Mhm.
or and then you can go someplace for the larger trips, or bigger trips. I love that you call it like they're called trips, because who doesn't want to go on a trip, right? I'm always down for a good trip, a good vacation, good trip.
Vacation.
Right? It's a double win right there. But how does that work? Do you help them find what, because I know that there's, again, for me, one of my concerns, just because I know that other people are probably having the same concern, and I'll be the first one to raise my hand, is finding the right is that the right word? The distributor or
A source.
Way to grow it. A source. There you go. To make sure, because I know that there are mushrooms out there that we do not want to be ingesting.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. There are some mushrooms that grow naturally that are psilocybin, especially in the Northwest, but I don't really suggest that people just find mushrooms, like forage mushroom. I forage for mushrooms, but they're edible mushrooms, not the psilocybin type. It just makes me uneasy that someone would not really understand the genetics behind the mushroom. And you should be working with a grower that knows how strong. They are organic beings, so you don't really know how much psilocybin could be in any certain gram. But if you know the genetics really well, then you can really gauge it. And there are certain strains that are appropriate for big trips and certain strains that are appropriate for microdosing. You'll have a better experience if you utilize the right strain and dose. And for instance, there are some mushrooms that are much stronger than others. So I love when people are like, oh yeah, I've taken 4 grams of mushrooms before. And I'm like, of what kind? Because 4 grams of golden teacher versus 4 grams of ape are completely different experiences. So you can't just believe that all mushrooms are created equal. But yes, you definitely want to find a right source. You want to ask them how old they are, because they do lose potency over time. And you don't want to just get a random bag of who knows what strain that could be like a year old or 2 years old. And it's something that I like support people on in understanding the questions that they should ask and potentially where they can source. But it's all depending on where people are, honestly, and making sure that they're safe in doing so. Because the last thing that I want is for someone to take the wrong strain at the wrong dose and have a traumatizing experience because they didn't feel prepared or know what to experience. And then they go out on the internet saying, oh my God, mushrooms are crazy, don't do that. That is not the PR that they need right now. And honestly, if used correctly, can do wonders. So that's been my mission, is like educating people, consulting people in how to do it safely and effectively so that they are not hurt and the mushroom's reputation is not further hindered.
Yay. That is so exciting. I'm like, I definitely am going to be in your space, because like I said, this is something that's been in my mind for at least a year, if not longer. It's probably been longer than a year. It's probably been almost 2 years. But there has been that fear of like, okay, well, who do I talk to about this? Who actually knows? Is somebody going to kill me? Like,
yeah. I understand completely.
So that's exciting that you're doing this. So if someone were to walk away with just like that one, like pivotal, like mic drop moment, what would you want that to be?
I believe that your business and your life can change in a huge way as long as you feel empowered to make those changes. I think the number one issue that I see people coming to me with is that they don't believe that they can change, or they don't know what their problems are, and they feel like they're going to have to make a certain amount of money or take a certain drug or be with a certain type of person to actually attain everything that they want. So my biggest thing is do the things that are going to empower you. So if that is working out, if that is breath work, if that is meditation, if that is microdosing, there are so many healing modalities out there that will empower you and help you believe that you are powerful enough to do what you need to do for your life to change. And I invite you to do those things rather than buy the next newest gadget or take that special pill or whatever it is. I know, just because I've already been down that path for a while, and this is a much better path